Jeff Sessions, the man who the ACLU said was the worst attorney general in history, has been fired. Technically, it's a resignation, but in reality, it's a firing. Ultimately, Jeff Sessions even wrote it in his resignation letter that I am firing at the request of the President of the United States. So even though it is a resignation letter, it is for all intents and purposes Jeff Sessions being fired by the President of the United States. This creates an interesting dilemma. Take a listen to this conversation that took place. And by the way, before we even get to this point, take a look at this conversation, because this hits it on the head on how this is going to be cast, but it nails down the perspective of the sides that are in this, meaning essentially all of establishment media and many of the political people in politics versus the Trump administration. Donald Trump is no longer fucking around. Let's hear this.
You think that you demonized immigrants in this election
to try to keep... I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign...
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have...
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Now, extremely testy, but then right-wingers are flipping out saying that Acosta abused that woman. Acosta didn't abuse that woman. Acosta just was trying to hold the mic, but whatever. They're just finding stuff to create hay about. The interesting part there is what Trump said. He says, I'm not concerned about anything with the Russia investigation. Russia investigation is a hoax. Now, if the President of the United States believes that the investigation is a hoax, what is the President of the United States going to do about the fact that that's a hoax? And that hoax has been dragging on for the last 2 years without anything tangible coming from it. I mean, after all, they went after a woman who was putting Facebook and Twitter ads and companies that they were ill prepared to defend in court. Those are the sides. The President of the United States says it's a hoax. The other people says it's nonsense. Now, to add a little bit to what Trump is saying here, he is not completely off base. Remember, when Hillary Clinton lost, Hillary Clinton didn't want to accept that loss, and she got her team together. This is in the book Shattered. I've read this over before, so I'm not necessarily going to fully go into it. But pulled her team together, and in pulling her team together, essentially said, I didn't lose because of anything I did. I was blameless. Me choosing Tim Kaine, not a fail at all. Me cheating Bernie Sanders, not a fail at all. Me not going to Wisconsin, not a fail at all. Me being Hillary Clinton, married to the guy who passed NAFTA. Not a problem at all. Being the most hated woman in politics with the exception of Donald Trump, who's not a woman, but you know what I mean. None of those things were failures. Not reaching out to the left wing of the party, running a campaign of hubris and ego as if the country itself should bow down and thank you, dear Hillary Clinton, for running in the election. That was what took place. You can make an argument she was selected, not necessarily elected, because some people were pushed out the way. I would argue for a deal that was made when Obama took office back in 2008. I'll make you Secretary of State and give you a platform for which you can jump and run for office. Joe Biden, sit down. Everybody else, sit down. It's her turn. We're with her. Well, when her turn didn't pan out, and when as many people wasn't with her as she thought it was going to be with her, then at this point, this kind of cynical knife to create a bleeding that the media and everything else kind of jumped on. Russia. Now, forget the fact that you don't have to go all the way to Russia to find things that was interfering with the election. You can look at things like interstate cross-check. The Republican Party themselves were interfering with the election and screwing with the process, shaving off just enough votes to get Trump over the finish line. The most shocked man alive on that cold November night was Donald Trump himself. Either way, it is a hoax. It's a hoax. So, but the media doesn't think so. At the very least, the media doesn't necessarily care. Or either way, the media doesn't think so. They think they're doing God's work in an odd, weird way. Even though nothing has come out of this for the last 2 years, they feel like we keep digging this hole, we're going to strike gold eventually. I should say strike oil. This is not sympathy for the devil. This is what it is. Objective view of reality. They've used this Russia nonsense to delegitimize Trump and to use as a platform to attack the left. Whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's environmentalist movements. I'm not going to go full into that point. So, here's another point. After firing Jeff Sessions, the question becomes what happens to the Mueller investigation. Because if you remember, Sessions recused himself. This angered Trump greatly. And regardless of angering Trump, he recused himself. Catch is, it goes to the next acting director, who will probably not recuse himself, in which case that guy will be overseeing the investigation. Let's take a look at that guy. So this is right here. Rod Rosenstein no longer overseeing Russia probe. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein is no longer overseeing Special Counsel Robert Mueller probe into Russia election meddling following the firing of Jeff Sessions. Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker will now oversee the investigation, a Justice Department spokeswoman said. The Acting Attorney General is in charge of all matters under purview of the Department of Justice, said spokeswoman Sarah Isger Flores. In a 2017 opinion piece, Whitaker called for Mueller to limit the scope of his investigation. The investigation was being managed by Rosenstein because Sessions had recused himself. So in one swoop, Donald Trump guts Mueller's or Rosenstein's power over the investigation by essentially putting the acting attorney general in charge of the investigation. Now the question becomes, will he recuse himself? And I suspect the answer would be no. There's more. Here's Jeff Sessions' letter. I'm putting that at the bottom for you to read for yourself. President Donald Trump on Wednesday announced the resignation of Attorney General Jeff Sessions, a development that is likely to spark a firestorm of criticism. Yes, it will. Trump has repeatedly lashed out at Sessions over his recusal from the investigation into Russia, election meddling, and other alleged failures. Let's call them alleged meddling. There was widespread speculation that the president will move to fire him after the midterms. Sessions has submitted the resignation letter at Trump's request, adding that he has no greater honor at serving alongside nation's law enforcement. Well, ACLU calls him the worst attorney general in modern history. Worst attorney general in modern history. The thing is, the question becomes, what does this mean, right? Let me see. There was something else. Oh, here we are, right here. It's hiding behind the camera. So, in an interesting twist, Donald Trump has given out, you can call it waivers. Now, this waiver was hidden from view. Crew discovers previously undisclosed ethics waivers for Solicitor General Noel Francisco. Now, this is the guy who they think Donald Trump would tap for the position. Crew has uncovered a previously undisclosed ethics waiver that may represent an effort to clear one of the obstacles Solicitor General Noel Francisco, replacing Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein as the office overseeing Russian investigation. The thing is, they think that Rosenstein is either going to be fired or he's going to resign. And if he's fired or resigned, Noel Francisco will likely to be the guy to face him. To replace him. Now, in being the guy to replace him, the question becomes, well, why does he need a waiver? What is going on that he would need a waiver? So right here, if Rosenstein resigns or is fired, someone will have to oversee special counsel investigation. Well, that becomes a moot point. After all, in the sense of Jeff Sessions recusing himself or fired, let's say fired, resign, fired, however you want to cut it. If you want to be technical, resign. If you want to be accurate, fired. But either way, assume for the moment that the Attorney General doesn't fully oversee it, then the person who would take over is Noel Francisco. Now, the problem is that Francisco has ties to the company that Trump is using to defend himself. So understand, Trump has had lawsuits. In order to defend himself, he's gotten lawyers, of course, and the team or the investigation team or the law team that he's using has ties to the person who's going to take over for Rosenstein. This is magnificently corrupt. Whatever you want to call it. I think the Russia investigation is a hoax, and yet this is corruption on a scale that is breathtaking. A law firm that you are using to defend yourself, somebody associated with that law firm is now being one of the people who are in charge of the investigation. And understand, when Mueller releases that information, Mueller is not giving all of these findings out to the public. He's giving them to the Department of Justice, who's going to be headed by people Trump is putting in office. This is magnificent corruption, even for Trump. Let's keep going. For one thing, the former law firm Jones Day represents the Trump presidential campaign in a special counsel investigation. Also, Mr. Francisco has a continuing financial relationship with Jones Day, which owes him more than $500,000. In addition, he previously appeared before the Justice Department as a member of the landing team on behalf of President's transition team. The first three obstacles for Mr. Francisco, his former employment relationship with Jones Day, raises an issue of the Trump ethics executive order. As required by the executive order, Mr. Francisco signed an ethics pledge in which he promised that for 2 years after joining the government, he would not participate in any investigation in which Jones Day represents a client. That promise means he must stay out of special counsel investigation until at least 2019. I got to be honest. I don't see the difference between 2019 and 2018 on this. This seems like nonsense. If it's not okay in December 2018, but January 2019, fair game. And so this just seems like nonsense to me. If you're going to make a complaint that, you can't, you get my point. I don't see the difference in a month, but this is a legal thing where he says he wasn't going to participate in the Trump administration. The waiver is troubling for a couple of reasons as well. First, the Office of General Government Ethics maintains an online list of all ethics pledge waivers issued by the Trump administration to political appointees serving outside the White House. Notably absent from the list is Mr. Francisco's waiver. At least one more recent waiver was included in the list, so it is strange that Mr. Francisco's waiver was left off the list. Potentially a mistake, but again, if you take a more cynical point of view, not so much. Second, the signature on Mr. Francisco's waiver appears to match the signature from former counsel to the president, Donald McGath II, that appears on other waivers. Mr. Gaff's involvement is troubling because he, too, comes from Jones Day and pledged not to participate in any investigation in which Jones Day is representing a party. By authorizing Mr. Francisco to participate in an investigation, Mr. Gahn himself participated in the investigation. Mr. Gahn himself received a limited ethics waiver as to Jones Day, but that waiver only authorizes him to participate in the meetings with communications with Jones Day and does not authorize him to make other substantive legal actions like issuing a waiver for Mr. Francisco. Essentially, both people sign an ethics waiver to essentially not to participate in anything dealing with, you could say, let's say the Trump administration's like investigation or the investigation for 2 years. Gahn has a limited ethics waiver himself, and with this, for whatever reason, he's been authorizing things that he hasn't supposed to been authorizing. In one part, because he wasn't supposed to be authorizing anything because of the ethics waiver or the ethics pledge that he made before joining this. And on the second point, he doesn't have the authority per se to do this because his ethics waiver only goes so far. It's a limited ethics waiver. This is fascinating. Let's keep going. I hope this is not too into the weeds. Notwithstanding the waivers, of course, Mr. Francisco should recuse himself from special counsel's investigation if Mrs. Ronstein resigns or is fired. There's still the matter of $500,000 Jones Day owes him, and there's his involvement in the Trump administration's landing team. Essentially, the guy was associated with Donald Trump, and being associated with Donald Trump's law team, he is now going to be put in a situation where he's overseeing an investigation into that same Donald Trump. Wow. ACLU calls Jeff Sessions the worst attorney general in modern history. The ACLU slammed Jeff Sessions Wednesday, moment after he resigned. Oh, punching a guy in the balls the moment that the guy gets hit in the head with the football. Calling him the worst attorney general in modern history. He was an egregious violator of civil rights and civil liberties. Anthony Romero, executive director of Civil Rights Group, says in a statement before running down a list of Jeff Sessions' actions that the ACLU undid civil rights for immigrants, women, and LGBTQ. From his plot to deport dreamers, remove police and law enforcement accountability, discriminate against transgender people, perpetuate and expand senseless enforcement of racist drug laws, use religion to discriminate against LGBTQ people, and undermine reproductive rights, abandon protections for women against violence, and even lied to the Senate to cover up the Trump campaign contact with the Russian officials. His tenure as the highest chief law enforcement officer was a complete disgrace to our nation's constitutional protections. That's what's taking place right now. This is all over Twitter. This is all over Twitter and all over social media. Here's the other thing. Everybody's a Twitter about this because nobody knows fully what this quite means and where this is going to go. If he's firing Sessions, it's possible that Trump has stopped playing around with this investigation, has full on embraced this idea of it being a hoax, and is taking moves to essentially either squash, stifle, or curtail the way this investigation is going. Chris Kobach is potentially, there's word that he may be tapped for this. After failing miserably and losing, it's possible that Donald Trump is going to tap him. And word is that he may be the person who gets tapped for Jeff Sessions' job. If you remember, this is the guy that created Interstate Crosscheck. And this is the guy that the judge made take classes on elections, seeing as he was trying to curtail people's ability to vote. This is where we are. I'm not going to keep this one long because, oh wow, there's 96 people here. I am shocked that there's this many people over this one. Apparently everybody is interested. Sessions deserves to rot in his own prison. Russian bot. this is one of those things that I bathe in. This is one of those things that I bathe in. My only thing is, there's going to be another creature that Donald Trump puts in right behind him. That creature seeming to be Chris Kobach. At the very least, that's the person that's, I would say, at the top of the list based on what I've been seeing. But, yeah, that's where we are. So, I'm not going to keep this one long. SSS, it means Trump is going to fire Ronstein after he fully declassifies everything. What exactly are the Democrats going to investigate in January? I don't know. Joe Howard, we are here for you, Jamal. Oh, thank you, Joe Howard. I appreciate that. Everyday Progressive Show. The new progressives who ran on the progressive platform are not progressive. There are many. I mean, is that a question? The new progressives who ran on the progressive platform, and I hate this word progressive. Hillary Clinton said she was progressive. Obama said he was progressive. You know, at some point it destroys the word. I get it. You have nowhere else to go, but they love you. So back for more abuse. Oh God, you guys are okay. You guys are fighting this out on your own. I suggest that bowing down to the same old bunch gets you nothing. Bob, I agree with you. I agree. Bob, you have my agreement. In fact, Bob always chastises me, saying that I'm not willing to do the work of a real man. He says that in the context of voting for somebody like Sanders, or for that matter, voting for Jill Stein. Republicans are so gross, Bob. And propping up the structures that got us here, be it Democrat or Republican. I don't want to get behind. I'm not jetting myself out of the Democratic Party only to find myself in a party of creatures. So I will end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. And one last thing before I finish, I want to thank people who are supporting me on the GoFundMe campaign. I've been issuing a campaign to save Sam Cedars' abused work wife, Michael Brooks. And up to this point, we have $150 raised. So thank everybody who's helped. Nunez Martin, Lori Rowley, Wesley Walker, Bob Ramirza, Roy Scott, Kalita Klein, Justin Essen, Danny Knapp. Thank you all. I appreciate it. All of this money goes towards abused wife. It's a good cause. Sessions deserve what he's getting from Trump, but saying you lay down with the dogs, you come up with fleas. Yet that is apt because Trump is hitting him. I mean, Sessions is considered a racist by many based on some of the things that he's, you could say, done in the past while he was in Congress. Look, I would say this. The list that I just rattled off from the ACLU is enough of a reason to greatly dislike Sessions. And if Donald Trump is going to hit him, I don't have to like Donald Trump, but I do like the impact on Sessions. So, Sessions, wearing a hat, make America great again. Donald Trump has chastised him, has called him bad names, has told him to go out and do his job, all sorts of stuff. And Sessions to sit there and took it. There's one clip, though, I want to play from Lindsey Graham, if I still have it up. I have a lot of windows up. It's one last clip. And I played this out of order. But right here. Take a look at this.
Attorney General in 2017. If Jeff Sessions is fired, there will be holy hell to pay. Any effort to go after Mueller could be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency, unless Mueller did something wrong.
Any attempt to go after Mueller would be the beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. You have a faction of people within a particular class struggle. They don't particularly like Trump. Yes, they like the tax cut. Yes, they like the attacking of immigrants. Yes, they like this idea of destroying environmental rights and all this other stuff. Love it. They don't like him. He's too gross. He rips the mask off of America. He's this flaming head, this Ghost Rider. They don't particularly like that. It's much easier for somebody like a Mike Pence that looks like somebody's grandpa while doing the exact same things that Trump is doing. Getting rid of Trump, you end up with Pence. Pence is just as bad, if not worse. Even if it's just because he's competent. So, I'll end this here. This one went a little long, but I think you guys get the point. Jeff Sessions is fired. Down goes Sessions. Down goes Sessions. If you guys enjoy the content, please support through Patreon or PayPal. Thanks all. My wife likes to say even $1 helps. So, thanks everyone.